While you guys are coming in, I'm just going to do a little bit of updates on some local news and just a little bit about the Midwest Cybersecurity Alliance. Many of you already know what we are. We are a nonprofit, and we are a group of individuals that come not just from the technical security space, but we also come from the legal risk management, and often there's lots of CFOs that attend as well. We, as I mentioned, are a nonprofit organization. We meet about every other month and we talk about hot cybersecurity topics. Many of you have been here many times before. It's very casual, as you know. So once we get into our topic tonight about cybersecurity awareness training, I'll be walking around the room with the microphone. So please ask questions as we go. Before we get started, I want to do just some update on news. Our next meeting is going to be January 17th, and we're going to talk about workforce development. We have a great panel. We're going to have an assistant dean from UWM, Chad Zahart, if I'm saying that right, Aaron. Tina Chang is going to speak from SysLogic, be on a panel. Norm Mackinson from Briggs & Stratton. We're going to have Thomas Allen for Tech Systems as well. And we're really just going to be talking about, issues in cybersecurity workforce development here in Wisconsin. I'm also going to turn it over to Dan now. I think we're going to host this meeting with InfraGard. And Dan, can you tell us a little about what InfraGard is and what your goal is? Thanks.
Absolutely. So, show of hands, who has heard of InfraGard? All right, better question. Who's a member of InfraGard? Okay, that's good. All right, for those of you who haven't heard or you are not a member, InfraGard is a public-private partnership with the FBI. The focus is the protection of our critical infrastructure, so protecting the energy sector and water, communications, transportation, and so on. There's 16 critical infrastructures. And there are 80-plus chapters throughout the U.S. Wisconsin, obviously, is one of those. We used to have 2 chapters, Milwaukee and Madison. And the FBI said, no, we want just 1 in Wisconsin. So they combined back in beginning of 2016. And since then, it's been okay. And they pretty much were, because it was a combined Madison, Milwaukee, they were bouncing back and forth between the 2 locations to have meetings. And we've continued that on since then. I became president at the beginning of 2018. So I'm just getting into this. There's a lot of work that we need to do. We have just a little bit less than 800 members right now, and we want to obviously keep increasing that. But there's some very good opportunities coming up in the future. As Jen said, we're going to look at partnering with the Alliance here and do some things. ISSA, if you are familiar with that organization, or better yet, even a member, we're partnering with ISSA as well. We're hoping in the May-June timeframe to have a conference in the Dells. We had one in the past, and it worked very well. So between the organizations that we are partnering with, we're hoping to get a lot of members there. Cybersecurity is obviously a main focus for us, but again, critical infrastructure, there's physical security as well. So we'll be bringing in more of that topic in 2019 also. Any questions real quick before we get started? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Dan. So before we move on to other updated topics, I just want to remind you our last session was hosted by Haylock, and we talked about DACRA, which is the new CIS framework. If you would like that presentation, I have a copy of that. It's also available on the Midwest Cybersecurity Alliance website as well. So other things, I just wanted to give a brief update. I don't know if you've all heard of the California Consumer Privacy Act, but I want that to be on your radar. That is not actually comes into effect until next January, and there's a delay with AG enforcement in California, but they have a 12-month look-back period. And what that means is if you're collecting data about consumers, you're going to need to be able to track that data, because in a year from now, when a consumer asks for copies of information that you've used about them, if you're selling their information, et cetera, you need to start keeping copies of that. Our firm is doing a lot of work in this space, so if you have any further questions about that, let me know, but that's something to watch out for with that 12-month look-back period. Also, if you're aware of NIST 800-171, that is the security framework that applies to government contractors. We've seen a huge uptick in that space. It comes from DFARS. In fact, I want to do a session. So if any of you are interested in co-sponsoring a session with me in the spring, I want to do a DFARS session. We actually have a huge presentation put together for clients, but we've seen a huge uptick. And once FARS adopts that, it's going to be any sort of government contractor, not just defense contractor. So if your company has any government contract business, you're going to need to be aware of those requirements. So that's something that's coming on the forefront. GDPR is, as you know, came into effect May 25th of this year. The European rules, we are still seeing a lot of work in that area for people to get into compliance, and there are some enforcement actions coming down. So those are some of the hot areas that are going on in the legal space. For all of you that are in the technical space, Foley is doing a CLE next week on various different legal topics, and you get something called CLE credit. I'm doing a session next Thursday on cybersecurity. So if you're in the technical space, please tell your in-house counsel and GCs if they want to know more about cyber, other topics. Foley is hosting a week-long free CLE week, and let me know if you want any information about that, or Casey has information outside. Before we get started into the presentation, I just want to go around the room and see, does anybody else have any other news they want to share, any upcoming seminars? Terry, I know you're doing something with the FTC. I don't know if you want to mention any of that. It's fine if you don't want to. The FTC is holding hearings on reasonable security, but is there anything else local? Are you guys doing anything? It is the holidays. Okay, so the next thing to think of is January 17th, because our invite will be going out. Okay, so getting started, as you guys know, we issue, continuing education credits, not just in the legal space, but also the IT space. If you want additional information, please ask Casey outside. Allison Jones, who you normally see that's here, is actually hosting an event out in California. You can also email her. We already talked about the Midwest Cybersecurity Alliance. As in every session, I just want to let you know we have this free state data breach notification law chart. It's available. Just Google Foley's 50 state data breach chart. You click on the state, and then it brings up the relevant information. Here we did an example of California. And now I'm going to turn it over to Haylock and Trend Micro. And I just want to say thank you very much, as always, for being supportive. And I will take the mic out into the audience if you guys have any questions, and I'll turn it over to you now. Thank you so much. Introduce yourself. Are you hooked up? Do you want to use this mic?
I'm going to use the stand mic.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Wonderful. All right. So thank you for being here. Thank you for having me here as well. My name is Vitaly Shtem. I'm a principal sales engineer at Trend Micro. Today we're going to talk a little bit, pardon my voice, it's been a rough week, and so if you can't hear me well, I apologize. Apparently not everything stays in Vegas. I was at reInvent for AWS last week, and that's a long story. But and I wasn't staying in Marriott, if anybody's asking. So let's see, I'll go through some of these. There we go. So as you can see, that's me, Vitaly Shtem, and the other speakers today. All right, so we're going to do a quick review of what has happened in 2017. You'll see there was not a shortage of breaches, incidents, and malware incidents all over the world. We're going to focus on a couple of those in specific, and then we're going to do all the different threats that you may experience as an organization in some of the next slides. And in the end, I'm going to show you a console that we're actually giving away a product of Trend Micro that you can try and test your users, because we know your users are going to be the most targeted piece of your organization, and unfortunately they are also the weakest link in the organization. So there's going to be a live demo of a free product that you can use, no strings attached, and you can try to phish your users and see how many of them actually fall for the phishing attempt. So on this slide, first we're going to take a look at, pardon, at the Cerber ransomware. This was one of the few things that was notable for last year's attacks. And it's ransomware that learned how to bypass machine learning detections. So you might have heard term machine learning and those kind of things as a next-gen technology. Well, the hackers and malicious actors, they're not sitting idly by and letting us catch them. So they're learning how to bypass the new and advanced detection techniques that the tools are being implementing. So that was one of the interesting ones from last year. The next one was WannaCry. Who heard of WannaCry last year? Good. Hopefully you weren't one of the victims, but unfortunately there was a huge impact, especially in Europe with UK health system, where 30% of hospitals were shut down for weeks after this specific incident. So building on the success of WannaCry, we learned that a lot of organizations are not patching their systems, which hopefully you are doing better than you were last year. And Petya ransomware actually built on the success of WannaCry, used some of those techniques, and then impacted Europe very severely. Mostly on financial sector and some energy sectors as well. And finally, and unfortunately, if you have a credit score, you were a victim of this as well, Equifax breach. So we learned that all of our records are now out there, and there's not much we can do about it other than freezing our credit score. So any questions on this? That's a quick brief overview of some of the things on this list. And in a few months, we're going to have an updated list for 2018. Hopefully, well, unfortunately, there's not a shortage of events to look back at. So before I go any further, I'm going to talk a little bit about Trend Micro. Everybody heard of Trend Micro before? Good. All right. So we've been in business for 30 years. We focus solely on security products. We're headquartered out of Japan, and our United States headquarters in Dallas, Texas. We have 5,500 plus commercial or employees, and we are in 45 to 50 companies globally, or top companies in the world. So there's going to be some statistics that I'm going to be bringing up in the next slides. So all of that information is produced by our research, by our expertise, and the things that we see. So all of the information next is coming from just what we see as a company in the threat landscape world. All right, so these couple of numbers that you're going to see here, that reputation queries. So whenever things happen in the world, they talk to our smart protection network. And these are the numbers, as you can see, 85 billion total threats, identified 6.6 new unique threats, and 600 million ransomware threats. So this is just the general numbers from as a threat research and threat prevention organizations that we see on the business end.
Is that per year?
This is from just last year, from 2017. So that's just in 1 year, 365 days. So we have all of our customers, as detections happen, all that information is fed back to us through metadata, so we can see what threats are being seen where. We also have honeypots and all those kind of good things to augment those detections. And finally, 57 billion email threats. This is what was blocked just by us. And we know there's a lot of other companies, then those numbers are pretty significant. If you can imagine 57 billion emails in 1 year by one company, it's not going down, unfortunately. Like I said, and users are going to be your most targeted asset. And we're going to go back to ransomware a little bit. You'll see that the number of families is dropping, but the efficacy of those families is increasing. So back in the day when it started years ago, you had ransomware variants in larger numbers, but they were very easy to pick up and stop. Nowadays, the ones that are actually happening are harder to stop. So the hackers and malicious actors are learning and finding new ways to be more successful. As you can see, the 41% drop, but unfortunately, they're still being successful, as evident by last year's incident. So the three major families from 2017, we already talked about the two of them. And finally, Bad Rabbit. So these are the three that were successful. We don't know what's going to be in like next year, but we don't expect it to go away because they're still making money. There are still systems that are vulnerable, and there are customers that are paying the ransom. So please, if you take one thing away from this, backups, backups, and backups. If you back up your systems, you don't have to pay them, restore the data, and off you go. Yes, you're going to feel some initial pain restoring the systems, taking appropriate actions, but at least you're not paying them, because if you pay them, it gives them more incentive to do it again and to others. So different methods of how systems get infected. So you'll have fileless infections are more prevalent. That's why the new techniques are becoming more and more popular. Behavioral monitoring things, machine learning, like I mentioned earlier, pre-execution machine learning, as you can see here, and exploitation of critical vulnerabilities. So patching again. And the delivery method of ransomware. You'll see the email, URL, and file. Email by far is the #1 way that ransomware gets delivered. And you'll know this if you have an email filtering solution in place. Look at the logs, and if you don't, well, you're experiencing it in your skin. URL and file are much more less likely to be used because they're being detected much easier than through the email. So what does this come down to? It's all about layers. You can't have one single technology to protect yourself. You need to be able to protect your email, your users need to be educated, and your infrastructure has to have multiple different techniques in order to prevent these different types of attacks. All right, so we talked about vulnerabilities a little bit, but we didn't focus on anything specifically. So Eternal Blue, the last one you see, is the one that was leveraged by WannaCry. And this was a gift that kept on giving last year a lot by shadow brokers. It was NSA leak that leaked a lot of tools that our government was using to do whatever it is they do. And unfortunately, it got into the wrong hands. So these tools then became more prevalent in the dark internet world of things, and they were used against us. Microsoft and other companies released patches very quickly, as quickly as was possible, because the number of vulnerabilities that was made public quickly. But not everybody was quick to protect themselves against it. So Windows patches, other infrastructure components need to be updated in a frequent fashion. Even if you wait extra 3 months, it increases your risks significantly, because nowadays it's possible, and some of the other discoveries this year, it was 48 hours since the vulnerability being publicly disclosed that there were wild exploitation of those vulnerabilities. So every hour counts. Every day, every week is by the time you're into weeks, somebody is already using it against organization. Again, kind of going through the vulnerabilities. If you look at, you have all the vulnerabilities that are disclosed. Obviously, you don't have every piece of technology and software in your network, so the larger vulnerabilities are irrelevant to you. Then you have vulnerabilities that are going to be in your network. So those are the ones that you need to focus on, and then you have to evaluate what risks do they possess against you. So once you identify those, then you need to focus. So these are the exploited vulnerabilities. These are the ones that you need to actually take some steps to mitigate. So the red triangle on the bottom, this is the ones that you need to know about, that you need to keep updated, and making sure that you take appropriate action to prevent being a victim of some type of attack. And WannaCry, Eternal Blue from last year, hopefully you updated your Windows systems. But this doesn't apply just to Windows. This will apply to all your network infrastructure, Cisco devices, whatever other flavor of Linux that you may have. Those exist at some level in every single piece of hardware on your network. Again, things even like printers are going to be exploitable to some fashion. Nowadays, you have Android running on some of the smart printers that you have in your office. Well, Android is an exploitable operating system like any other operating system. So who actually thought about patching their printer? There, at least one hand, that's good. So as technology progresses, we expect much more functionality from the tools that we've used to ignore, but now they're becoming so general that we need to focus and shift our focus a little bit from just workstation servers. Now we have to look at the whole picture. Internet of Things, IoTs, those are bringing risks that we have not considered before to be as powerful.
And speaking of that, I forgot to mention, Cisco is going to do a session with us on IoT in the spring. So they're going to sponsor a session, and if anybody wants to be on that panel, let me know. But they're going to sponsor that in the spring.
Awesome. All right. Again, vulnerabilities patching and proactive measures. So proactive measures are going to be things like network devices, network appliances, IPSs specifically. They're designed to identify the malicious traffic that is attempting to do some harm and prevent it from happening. So one of the other new things that came out of nowhere was cryptocurrency mining. Cryptocurrency as an idea is relatively new, and because of this price jump that we saw over the last couple of years from pennies to thousands of dollars per Bitcoin, it became profitable to actually infect systems to do the mining for you. You'll see the huge jump from Q2 to Q3, the number of events. Pretty significant. It's not a linear growth by any measure. This came out of nowhere because, again, instead of infecting systems to encrypt them and try to get ransom, it's pretty obvious when the system is infected. Somebody's going to take action right away to clean it up. Well, if it's cryptocurrency, all you're going to have is high CPU usage. And if you don't have the appropriate tools and controls in your network, you may not know about it. So you may have an office of 1,000 computers. They're all infected, and they're running up the electricity bill and doing potentially other malicious things on the machine, on the network, but at the same time, somebody's getting money from it. So that's why there was a significant jump in those type of threats. And again, this is the distribution of different systems that were impacted. Obviously, computers are going to be number one because they have the most computing power. And these are other different methods listed here. Excuse me. And finally, but not something to be ignored, is business email compromise. Like I said earlier, your users are going to be targeted for different reasons, either to be ransomware targets. Business email compromise is very specific to the C-level, financial side, and legal, right? And you will see the spike here, partly covered by the video overview, but there was a significant number. It's about double from first half to second half of the year. And again, the reason it's happening, because it pays. If the malicious actors are not getting the money from it, they are not going to be doing it. And it's very easy nowadays with social media to gather enough information about your company to start actually digging for more data. Then once you have the threshold needed, you can start asking for money. And if you don't have the appropriate controls in your business to oversee the financial transactions properly, you may have money leaving the door for no reason. And this is an example of business email compromise email. So again, all boils down to user training. Your users need to know what they can do, what they shouldn't do. And there are obviously technologies nowadays, which we can talk about after my talk here, what can be put in place to mitigate some of these risks. But down the line, it's all about user training. And the most countries are going to be US and UK that are being targeted because of the advanced payment systems and ease of payment that now we employ. Obviously, we handle money differently than maybe some European countries or Eastern Bloc countries, so we're still the number one target. And then the different positions that are targets and the sources. So part of this, why it's still so important, if you're moving to the cloud, and if you don't, you're still going to have OWA, which is the web-based access to your email. Two-factor authentication is going to be number one thing that you want to implement for either one of those scenarios to protect yourself. And if you're using O365, everybody's logon consoles pretty much looks the same. And it's very difficult to identify if the link if the web page is good or not. Now they're getting very crafty with .microsoft domains and some other things that are very hard to pick up unless you're a security professional. And if somebody is not proficient in computers, it may be very difficult for them to actually identify those things. So they can put in their credentials, and if there is no two-factor authentication, 30 seconds later, there is a bot logging into that account and sending email, sending spam, or worse, mining for information or trying to do wire, wire fraud or something like that. And then there's going to be significant conversation history in some of these that make these emails more legitimate to have users actually believe what's happening. So again, the best protection is going to be user training, and then you have to put in appropriate controls in your organization for financial transfers. And then there is also technology. So now I think I have a few more minutes. We're going to do a demo real quick. Give me 1 second. I'm going to show you the phishing simulation. Let's see. We're going to log into here. So the thing that we're giving out today is a Phish Insight. This was developed specifically to help organizations phish their users and do education and gauge the level of expertise their users have. So I'm going to log in here, and we're going to go through this real quick.
So while you're doing that, let me ask a question. So do you recommend doing this plus also all the training that you're going to be talking about, Glenn? And we do that same training, but while he's loading this up.
We'll actually talk about that, but the idea is to do a phish test before the training and then tell them how bad it was.
Exactly.
And then give them the training and then give them then do the phish test a bit of time after the training and see if the training helped at all. That's part of the move, right? So get a baseline before you do the training and then test them again. See how well you did.
Yep. So the reason why we're actually doing a live demo is because I wanted to show how actually easy it is to start. I already have an account. If you didn't, there was a login where you could create an account. All you do is provide your name, email, and password, and then you're taken to this step right here. So there are a couple of steps here, and all it is about is creating a campaign. So this is how you're going to start actually sending in those malicious or fake emails to your users. It can be something like LinkedIn, right? Users are going to be enticed to actually click those links, and we're going to show you some of the things in here. So give me 1 second. So before you do anything, a little technical speak. We still want to prove that you actually own the domain that you're sending it to. We don't want you to be spamming random companies. So you have to put in a text record in your DNS entry or your domain to make sure that you actually own the domain you're sending to. And once you do that, it's super easy. You just copy, paste, create it. It takes literally 5 minutes for whoever has access to your domain. And after that, step 1 is select your recipients. So you can import it or just manually type it in. You can key in this format: first name, last name, email, department, region. That's going to be the people who you're targeting. You can also import a CSV if hopefully you have more than 20 users you want to test against. By default, these are 2 options you have right here, and we have a test in here just for demonstration purposes. Then you're actually selecting the template. We have a lot of pre-built-in templates. So you have behavior, the topic that you can filter on. So whether or not clicked link, and let's say office communication. So you can actually customize these to be more specific to your environment. And once you do, let's take a look at the simulated page. So this is going to be an example like this, but I'm going to actually pull up LinkedIn one. Let me take a look. Where is it?
Did that say free coffee? Is that what it was?
Yeah, there's gift cards ones where you're prompting users, hey, you want a free gift card? Please type in whatever it is that we're looking for. So this is an example of LinkedIn one, and I promise you, it looks legit because our company tried this on us before they released it to public. So I guarantee we had actually pretty much everybody in the company received this email, and because I remember this guy's face. And obviously this is not going to be in there, but it looks very legitimate in the email, and we can tell who clicked on the link and who entered their credentials. So you'll get the different metrics from those. Let's see. Let's go back here. So once you select your campaign, whichever it is, you move on to this select the sender, right? Who is this coming from? So you have the HR department, online services, services messenger. You create that. In this case, it pre-fills the information, the linkedin.com. So we're going to be spoofing the source. So it will look like it comes from LinkedIn. This is why we also want to make sure that you add this information to the whitelist, because we're not doing everything that the malicious actors are doing to bypass your security controls.
And when you say whitelist, that means that is allowed to get into your organization.
Exactly.
Otherwise,
Yes.
it'll be blocked. Just
Because
for the non-techies.
Yeah, so the whitelist will basically says, all right, we are allowing the email to come from these email addresses because we're not going through all the different hoops that the malicious actors are going to go through, but you'll still get the same information and the same result and data that you need. And then you select your schedule. And that's it. When do you want this to come out, campaign duration, and that information. After that is done, I don't have any reports in here, unfortunately, but I can show some of them in here in the PowerPoint. So you'll see the responses, region, overall behavior, information that you can actually act on. Like we said earlier, you'll know what happened before your education and then what happened after. How many people clicked. If somebody keeps clicking on those links, no matter how much you train them, well, maybe they need a job without a computer. But
Is this type of thing, once you have the results of this test, is this something you actually can train users to spot, or is it something you need to buy software for to protect?
So it's both. There is software that can help mitigate the amount of these emails that will be delivered to the end user, but then the training portion is much more important, because the amount of and different kinds of these types of threats that are coming in, the user education is always going to be number one. There is a saying, nothing is foolproof. And the same thing, any technology will have its weaknesses. So end user education is always going to be number one. But again, you want to have at least, if you can mitigate from 100 emails to 30, that's already better, right? If with technology, but those 30 are still a significant impact on your organization. So you want to also make sure that your users are properly trained. So I wanted to say thank you, and I'm going to go back into your slide. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions, we're going to be here after, and we can continue. And now I'm going to have Glenn take the spot. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Glenn, will you show them that poster too? I forgot to mention that. The poster that's sitting right there on that front chair, just so you guys can take those too.
So there's some user awareness posters that we tried to have them be like, you got the goblin here, there's like, themes and things like that. Catch the eye, right? What's the goal? We want people to look at it, right, and actually learn something from it. So, it's like eye candy, like, hey, what's that funny thing? Let me read about it. Oh, I learned something by accident, right? So the idea is that we want to try and, there's a whole bunch of posters on the table as you exit. Take them, they're free. It'll be fun. So I was reminded of a story real quick. Not as sophisticated, and this is a great tool. That's the kind of the examples that I have for phishing emails are a little bit easier to spot. But at Haylock, we do penetration testing as well. And we do an email thing, a little bit more manual. But I'm reminding of around the coffee, around the water cooler, they were talking about a time when right around this time of year, they sent out an email. I think it was like the week before Thanksgiving. And it said, we have a new policy that if we've taken away everybody's time off for the holidays, you have to reestablish your holiday time by clicking here and filling out this extra form or whatever. And it literally caused a panic in the whole organization. So the guys got a little bit of a talking to, but it was an ultimate It was almost like 100% of the people clicked on it. So it depends on the kind of email that you're trying to do, but these are good ones as well. Very, very sophisticated. So I'm Glenn Stout. If you listened to the incident response thing from a while back, maybe a year ago this time frame, we talked about incident response. So we're going to talk about security awareness today. How many people took their security awareness training this year for your organization? How many liked it? That's a good answer.
You have to ask how many of us created it.
How many of you created it? There you go. That's why you like it, right? So the thing about security awareness training is that you already know that they don't want to be there, right? So the idea is you want to try and make it so it's a little bit somewhat entertaining. This is all about me. We're only going to spend 20 or 30 minutes on this slide. We'll talk about my childhood. No, so I do a lot of fun things for Haylock, and one of the main things is we do risk assessments. I have a little bit of a training experience, so we're able to do a little bit of training as well. So why do we need a security program, of course? Well, we want to be able to make sure users are aware of what's going on. We want to make sure standards requirement. How many people are taking training just because we have to? To follow PCI DSS or this one or that one. We have to make sure we take it because somebody's making us, which is music to our ears.
And the regulators will ask.
The regulators are going to ask this first question, right?
With the record.
Where's the record? Where's the sign-in sheet, right? Of course, it's a program that should be on your annual budget, not just mixed into the normal thing. But the idea is, I looked at all the standards, and I know that might be a little bit tough. I looked at all of them here, and I said, okay, what are some of the key things that all of them call for? Well, some of them call for policy, standards, or procedures, implement a program, actually do training specific to insider threat. They actually call that out for CIS 7 and PCI DSS, that users actually need to check off and review the policies and procedures within the organization, role-based training, and acknowledgement of an acceptable use policy. So if you're trying to follow any one of these standards, here's kind of the different various requirements for user awareness training that are required. So what is the security awareness program? I don't know why that thing is blocking my beautiful slide. I don't know how to do it. Turn this camera off or something. Anyway, we'll live through it. So what are the key requirements of a program? What is in a program? Well, first of all, it kind of needs to be all year. Can't be just, this 1 hour a year. Ain't gonna cut it. It needs to be a consistent message and actions by everyone. You can't have your training be this way and then have the CEO or whatever do something blatant in front of everybody doing it the wrong way, right? We want to partner with human resources. This cannot be seen as an IT program. We want to have that C-level support. We want to have multiple channels of communication, have it be planned and scheduled, and we're going to go into detail on each one of those. So all year, not once a year. It's got to be an all-year engagement. It can't just be that 1 hour of training per year. Other elements that we'll talk about later in the presentation need to be happening on a continuous basis. If I said, hey, I got a great exercise program, it's exercising for 1 hour a year, would you lose any weight? And would you be any healthier? Not no, but hell no, right? It's not going to happen. You have to be able to do everything all year long. It's a muscle that you constantly have to exercise. Consistent message and actions. We want to make sure that it can't be just people from IT doing it. You can't have people actively thwarting the requirements of what we're trying to train. You got to make sure that everybody's on the same page, and it does start at the top. You need to get the people at the top to be able to do that. For an example, if we're saying, hey guys, we got to encrypt all these sensitive emails, and the CEO sends out an email that's unencrypted to everybody, they're going to go, well, what the heck? You're training us to do this, and this guy's not doing it the right way. Why should we follow? And it's a mixed message. So we want to have everybody on the same page. This cannot be necessarily seen as an IT program. I can't pound my fists enough about that. If this is seen as an IT program, people are less likely to agree. People out there that have done the program, you agree with that? 100%, right? So if it does not have that C-level support, it will fail, period. No one will come to the training because managers will not release their people to come to training. An hour, all my people, every year, we're busy. You know, you could skip that. Don't go to that. I got 20 people in an apartment, I'll send 5 to the training or whatever, if it's like a live training thing. They will do whatever they can to avoid it if they're not told to do it, okay? It's just the way it is. If it's an online thing, managers might not enable team time to take it. All right, you got 8 hours of work to do. Well, you got an hour worth of training. You do that on your own time. Got to have that C-level support. You got to have that support from up above saying, look, give them the time to do that. It's part of their workday. And again, supported. We want to partner with human resources. It's got to be connected to them as much as possible because they, believe it or not, HR probably has a little more sway in the organization than the IT department, believe it or not, with regard to taking training. It's kind of in their world. Excuse me.
Can I ask you a question, Glenn? I mean, one of the
Sure.
things I think people need to understand is that employees really are the cyber defense. I mean, I don't think
question
employees
about it.
understand that.
They are, and again, you could throw as many stats or whatever at them, but the idea is those that get it. And again, if you're trying to push a rope, you know, trying to get these the higher ups to understand that, you know, I'm gonna leverage some of the slides that Vitaly just had about there, you know, regarding the stats and this and that and the other thing. I actually don't even have stats in my user presentation. I just say, look at today's news. Say, look at the newspaper. I don't even have to show any trends. I say, look at today's newspaper. And I also go to the IT department and say, give me the last 5 hacks that you guys had against you, or last time you at least stopped them. That's all the information anybody usually needs. Thank goodness within the last few years, people are a little bit more, you know, on board with this stuff. It is less, you know, it's not the blinders type of thing. But if there are private companies sometimes that don't want to, you know, money's tight and all this stuff, they don't want to offer the time to do it. It's really about the time of the people to do it. It isn't about the money for the training itself. So I don't know if I answered your question, but.
No, I just think that's important because I don't think that management always understands that our people are our first line of defense. It's not just always an IT solution.
They're absolutely the last line of defense. We want the training to be managed by HR, at least to get butts in the seats, right? We want to make sure that they are kind of partnering with us. We'll help create the material in IT, but we want HR to help kind of get people to the training on time. Anything involves employees, we want to go through HR anyway, right? Anytime that we tag an employee to do something, we want to make them our friend. We want to make them part of the program, okay? This isn't an us versus them. This is a we. We have to do this to help everybody be more secure. Meaning, when they're onboarding, do they, you know, watch a video of the training that happened last, you know, fall or whatever, or do we make sure they have a training within the first 30 days of their onboarding to the organization, right? So IT can't enforce that, right? HR has to be able to do that. Now, you can be extra stringent by saying you don't get your login until you pass training and sign right here, right? You're laughing, you've done that, right? That's a little devious. But then who pushes back on that? The manager, right? They want that person to start working right away, and then the 30 days pass and nobody gets in trouble for not taking the training, so they just don't do it. So we have to make it a requirement that is unbendable. Multiple channels of communication, we're going to talk about all these in like training, posters, newsletter, lunch and learn, anything else. All of these are going to cover later on, but these are the multiple channels of communication. It can't just be 1 hour training, you're done. It's got to hit them with posters, this and that, newsletters. It's got to be planned and scheduled. Put these things on a calendar. Put a lunch and learn on a calendar. Make it something that is, we look forward to it, right? Schedule it. Make sure it's not just something we get to when we have time, because we're never going to have time, right? You got to put the big rocks in first, right? You got to make sure that it's on your schedule to get done. Plan on, you know, everyone know that October is Security Awareness Month. It's my favorite month of the year. Woo! You guys having fun with that? I know that's a real security wonk thing, but yes, Security Awareness is October, so you can do a lot of your training and stuff during that time frame, and you got a little fanfare around it. So what should be in your security awareness program? Even if you do some of these, you're going to be better off than none. Let's start, of course, the key one is having the training itself. So We have general security awareness training on an annual basis minimally. We're going to talk about how we're going to deliver it live or through online in a second. But the idea is we want to make sure we include topics that are required by the standard. Remember I talked about insider threat? There's some specific topics that certain standards require, and it's a literal extra question that they ask on a risk assessment. Does your security awareness training include insider threat, yes or no? So this is not just me making that up, it's on the standard itself. So we want to make sure we cover all those requirements. And it's also a good time to re-acknowledge the acceptable use policy. Review your acceptable use policy. Is it up to date? Does it have some of the latest things, some latest technologies that you might want to say are not allowed or whatever? Usually you want to say what is allowed, not what is not allowed. But certainly there's some sections there that you might want to specifically call out if there's certain things that are happening that you want to make sure they acknowledge. Go ahead.
And you should have legal review that too before you re-acknowledge
Great
it
point.
every year.
Anytime you want the users to sign anything, whether they acknowledge it electronically or for signature, have legal review it, make sure it's legally okay.
I mean, one of the things you should talk to legal about is if your company has to comply with GDPR and you're monitoring employees, that's one of the things you want to have in your acceptable use. So before you roll that out again, take a time to talk to your in-house legal staff or outside counsel.
Absolutely. When I ask this question, sometimes people say, yeah, we had them assign the acceptable use policy when they started, and people have been there for 7, 8, 9, 10 years and haven't or they acknowledge their employee agreement. Like they feel that's enough. Sometimes it is, because it says, we're going to follow all the policies or else they figure that's good enough, but it doesn't really help me know anything, right? So the idea is you want to give the opportunity to re-acknowledge or re-sign the acceptable use policy on an annual basis. That way everybody's on the same page year after year, and it helps out. And make sure we get training, like documentation they went through the training. Even that sign-in sheet works, right? Doesn't have to be, their fingerprint and triplicate. Just I was here is usually enough. When you're creating your user awareness training, it should only be as technical as it needs to be. It's awareness, right? It's not, scroll right, click left, right? It isn't a role-based training or a technical training. It's here's awareness, right? Try to avoid as many technical terms as you can. A lot of times if I have a company of, young tech firm, it's a different story. If I'm at an old law firm where there's people that have been there for 25 years, a totally different story. People came up to me afterwards and, hey, Glenn, we have a department of 6 people over here. Is it okay if we all, because we kind of on each other's computers all the time, is it okay if we all change our password to the same thing? Is that okay? And, look at me with a straight face, ask me that question. I was like, no, it's not. But, good question. But, no. But my point is there's a lot more, different levels of sophistication out there. So you have to really be aware of what's going on. When you say a PIN on a phone, what is that? Okay. So you get people from all different walks of life when you do this kind of thing. So you want to get them going on that. For custom training, I'm a fan of that, of course. The more you can connect to the actual environment, the actual applications that they're using, the current policies, the better. The more people think that it's about them, you'll get more engagement. They'll go, okay. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Do you recommend, one of the things we recommend is to try to make it more personal to the individual, not just in the work environment, but the personal environment. So they may not show for work, but they may show up for their own personal reasons.
Just like we rehearsed. The training that I personally do, it literally on the third slide, it's not only for work, but for your personal life as well. If people know that this is going to help me in my personal life as well, because I talk about social media or whatever, and that has nothing to do with business, right? So talk about, different types of things that do impact your personal life. So I enthusiastically encourage you to include all those different things so people have like a full armor for not only work, but for the personal life as well. One of the things I say is everyone is connected all the time. And that helps people understand that it's not just the work thing. Did I answer your question? Okay. Make it fun. I already know when I'm standing in front of a group of people doing security awareness training, I already know that they don't want to be there. They don't. They don't. If I said, hey, everyone have the option to leave, they would all leave. So you have to make it as fun as possible and come up with, routine, as best as you possibly can. Not everybody can be a comedian or whatever, but the thing is, as fun as you can make it, try and make it fun. Give out prizes and candy, silly stuff. I hand out candy and prizes like a circus clown. We want to reward people for paying attention and just make it as fun as possible. Now, these are the topics that I cover when I do the training. It's kind of break it up into the old people, process, and technology categories, and we try and customize it to the environment that they're in. I actually do cover all these topics in about an hour. Role-based training is another requirement, like NIST 800-53 specifically asks for role-based training. A couple other ones do. What is role-based training? That's if I can do regular thing, but maybe I handle HIPAA data. Maybe I'm a credit card person handling data, payment card data. So there might be some specific things that not everybody in the whole population of the organization needs to know, but specific individuals, a tenth or 20% or 10% of people need to know these specific handling. So that's role-based training, and that's a level lower than general security awareness training. It's specific about HIPAA or payment card data or anything that handles special procedures or training. So when you're thinking of training, if you think you're going down that road, go, you know what, that might be for role-based training. So just think about that differentiation and see if you have that requirement as well. Phishing tests. We just had a great demo on phishing tests. Some organizations provide a service that send fake emails to see how effective the awareness training was received. Again, we just talked about this a moment ago. Do it before the training, hold the training, and then do it again after the training. I'll never forget when we did it one time. We said, look, guys, you got anyone remember this email? How many people clicked on it? 78% of you did. So, I mean, that's why you're here. So it kind of gives you a little credibility for have them to kind of sit and listen.
One of the things I'm seeing regulators asking if you've done phishing training, and they want actual copies of your phishing training. So
Well, there you go.
I mean, what's hard about it is it shows how many people clicked and were negligent, but it also shows that you're actually doing training and it still gets through.
And it helps sharpen the saw, right? So like the phishing training can happen. That could be part of your overall program where you do this throughout the year, so to speak. Posters. We just held up a couple of posters here. We want to ensure that we get the information to them via multiple channels. Posters do fill that requirement. Rotate them so they don't get stale, make it new, fresh. We do create some posters that have holiday themes and stuff. Got bot bilked, try and play on words. We got a little, don't ask it. All free, by the way, all free.
On the back table?
On the back table.
Or download?
Or download, so you can
Okay.
download them as well. So I don't know what our copyright infringement is on some of these things, but we do.
Shh.
This has all been vetted through our trademark attorney. That's his original works.
Just teasing, of course. But we, for example, we come up with theme ones for medical. So I actually came up with the idea for this one. We did this. We gave this to a hospital. This is about that business email compromise, this Wired one here. We got, the Cyber Goblin. We got the, Shamrock, and just I want you to change your password. Just things that get your attention, right? So these are the ideas to get people's attention to to kind of dig into this and go, oh, that's right. I should change my password or this or that, or whatever the case may be. Going to pause for a second. How are we doing? It's good? That's what you wanted? Okay. Newsletters. Sometimes these are tough because someone actually has to sit down and do work, right, and create a newsletter. Sometimes it's a bit of a pain, but it is worth it. We don't want to have too many, not too few. We don't want people to look at it and go, delete, right? We don't want to create spam for our own organization, right? So we want to be able to provide snippets maybe of annual training. Hey, remember this password thing or whatever, a little maybe a little couple slides from the training, pull the most important ones, remind people, maybe talk about an upcoming event that might happen, this or that or whatever is happening. Include tips and tricks, look at the viral video for the space bar for the phone, right? I mean, if we can figure out something, everyone see that with the space bar with the phone?
No.
No, I'm the only one? Holy crumbs. If you're texting and you want to move your cursor up in your text, if you hold the space bar down on your texting and you kind of move it around with your phone, you can move that space bar anywhere you want. You don't have to put your finger, in there. Anyway, that was kind of a viral video that went out. If we can come up with a little bit of a viral thing to help out our team, hey, here's the newest virus that's out there, or give them maybe a thought on, hey, did you have your information in with Marriott? Was it Marriott that got hit? Here, maybe people are scared about that stuff, right? So maybe give them a little calming information. Maybe you do a little research and say, hey, here's what you should know about the Marriott hack if you had a Marriott card or something. So something that'll catch their eye to get them interested and have just a little bit more engagement. Or maybe even a little article written by somebody internal, or even a link to an article from a vendor or somebody that would be interesting, right? Something like a 3-minute read, nothing too elaborate, right? Again, we want to get it to them, but not inundate them, because we know that they don't want to read it, okay? If you think about that mentality, you'll be more successful, because you have to realize that there's a very few people that are actively wanting to get an email about security awareness. Think about that for just a second. Maybe 10% of the people really want that information sent to them and are actively want to engage. The rest of them, we got to pull with us, man. We got to get them interested. We got to get them to go with us. Lunch and learns. Bring a bribe, pizza. Hey, pizza, lunch and learn. We're going to talk about, this new thing, this new tool. We're rolling out the ability to encrypt emails. We're going to talk about it today. We can't find a topic. Maybe was the organization a victim of a cyber attack that was hopefully battled back? Here's what happened. Here's how we can avoid it. Here's how you can help our organization do better. If your annual training is in October, you can't wait till October sometimes to get some of this information out, right? You want to have something in, May or June or something like this. Is there something in the news that might impact our employees that we want to put out that's beyond the newsletter, but beyond having everybody come in for a big training, right? What's that in between? Have a week of lunch and learns. Have it every day so people can come in and, have a slice of pizza or whatever and learn about it. Maybe we have a new policy that we've put in place. Have it be like a little bit of a soft landing as opposed to just some email that comes out that doesn't have a lot of flavor around it. Maybe there's a new security tool or app, that we want to share. Here's a new way to do VPN or whatever the case may be. This takes work, okay? This is nothing worth anything is easy or free, right? So this does take a little bit of a work, but the idea is that you have to think of different angles and different ways to get people to engage in the security of your organization. A job aid. That's old school, but it works. It's that piece of paper that, sometimes people even laminate it, right? It has all these little tips and tricks on it. Provide the actions. Most people in the world, they just want you to just tell me what to do. Okay? 10% of people are going to actively want to seek it out. 10% of the people are going to not do anything you tell them ever, no matter what. 80% of the people just desperately want you to just tell them what to do so I go home at 5 o'clock. All right? So if you appeal to that 80 to 90% and make sure that everyone is on board with what those rules are. If you want me to encrypt, just tell me how to do it. If you want me to not do this, or if you don't want me to use a USB stick anymore and you want me to use OneDrive, tell me how to do it. So help them help themselves, right? Usually if they're doing something odd, they're doing it for business purposes. They're doing it because they think that's the only way they need to do it. Have them create an environment where they're able to share. I'll give you an example. At a law firm, there were people, the person that has to manage making all these filings. There's different courts all over the county or what have you. They all have a different password that they have to use to log in and submit all these documents. The way that she was managing was she had an email that she kept in her email box with 100 passwords on it, and then every month that she would change them and she would just email them out to the 20 lawyers that had to deal with it. Okay? We're all, going, ugh, a little bit, because we don't want to email passwords, of course, but that person didn't have any other way to do it. They didn't know how best to do it. So by identifying these and creating a culture of, hey, I need help, we can help people do things the more secure way. So same thing with, I was doing a risk assessment and a guy had I said to the accountant, the guy that had all the financial information for the whole multi-million-dollar organization, I said, you're the accountant, where's your laptop? It's right here. I said, hey, I don't know why I thought to ask this, but I said, do you have a copy of that? Do you make any copies? Do you put stuff on a jump drive working at home? He goes, oh yeah, I have a full copy of my whole hard drive right over here. It's on this external hard drive right here. It's right there. It's all right. You want to see it? And then the CTO kind of did a little bit of a face plant here. But I said, hold on. Is there a policy against that? Why is he doing that? He clearly doesn't trust IT, or he clearly is thinking that he is doing. People don't do unsecure things most of the time to just do wrong, right? He thought that he had to do that for some reason, to save that information off to the side, to create that unencrypted, no password required copy of every single file for the accounting system for this company that he carried around in his bag all the time. Now, we all go, ugh, but find out why they're doing these things, right? I know I'm a little bit on a tangent here, but the point is that most of the time people do things not because they're trying to be, crazy. They're trying to do their job. They think that that's what they have to do their job. We want to help them do their job better, and usually by putting rules and actions out there, it helps flesh out some of these things. Try to make a don't do that list. We don't want to do a don't do that list. We want to do a do this list. If people read, who likes to read a don't do that list? Anybody? Anybody love that? Nobody likes that, right? Nobody wants to read a list of things, don't do that. They want a list of things that they can do, right? So let's try to make it a positive list than a list, because that just rolls over people's heads. No one likes to read that. So here's an example of a couple of job aids that I've put together. I like to put them in categories of, and I'll show you a little bit later. We want to make sure that we allow people, like notice in the bottom here on the job aid, how to contact IT for help, right? Always give people an ability to get help, right? Make it easy for them to get help. Make it easy for them to ask questions, okay? Security Awareness Fair. This is a tall order sometimes, but usually you try and do it during October. Maybe hold annual training during that month, have it in the cafeteria, have cookies, a giveaway maybe, a little gift card. I helped put on one of these at a hospital in our area, and it was well received. There was some, pens and giveaways, and we gave away the job aid. They took the training that month, gave away a $50 Amazon gift card. Get just people excited about it a little bit. Okay, just do whatever you can to get them going. Hand out the latest job aid. Documentation, as a quick aside, we want to make sure that we, whatever that is, if we have them acknowledge the policies, have them acknowledge any non-disclosure agreements, make sure for sure that you document successful training, that people have done the training. Sometimes tough to do if you have maybe an online situation where it's not clean, it's not like a whole system, like hey, just click on here, watch this video, and then sign that you watched it or whatever. So the idea is figure out a way to make sure that you get, people that acknowledge the training. A question I get a lot is, what's better, live custom versus online canned? So there's a difference. There's a discussion around that. Online training, is it better than live training? Well, or is it better, right? Custom live, which is, Glenn talking to you about it, specifically about your organization, or, like a little video that's 5 minutes that can apply to anybody. So there's various different questions. So here's the questions that I ask all the time. when people say, hey, I want security awareness training. Well, what's your budget? Let's talk about that first. How many users? Are they located in one place, or are they scattered all over the country or world? Are there specific policies or directives that we need to make sure all people are aware of? Do we have a special policy, for an example, on encryption or how to use USB? Is there C-level support allowing people to attend training? These questions help me drive whether they're going to have a better option with online or custom, or a combination of both. So the pros of the online CAN training. So if you'd buy something from a vendor, you can reach a lot of users in many different locations. It's always there. They can play the videos anytime. They're generally short and sweet. They really do the 10 minutes or less type videos. They do cover the main topics that many of them cover. They're provided by companies that specialize. That's all they do is user awareness training. They're definitely out there. Relatively inexpensive. Usually you measure this by training dollars per person, right? It's like, XYZ number of dollars per person. The cons are the organizational detailed rules are not addressed. So if you have a specific policy or specific thing or a specific way you want to do something, it's certainly not addressed in the CAN training. Users may kind of check out if they don't see that connection. Certain number of users will. And usually at the end it says, if there's any questions, contact your ID department. Well, if you're part of the live training, the questions are already answered, but if it's part of the CAN training, it's always maybe a follow-on if I have a question. Go ahead.
And I think your legal department and your compliance department need to review if you're going to use an online training. I've seen many of them, they're not legally correct. So before you roll something out and IT approves it, I mean, it should be bypassed to your
great point.
compliance and legal, because they gloss over things and sometimes they're inaccurate. And so your lawyers and your compliance people might be mad at you if you're passing out a training that is not vetted through them
That's a
first.
great point. And it's not interactive, of course, no way to ask questions. Now, the live training pros and cons, well, it is customized to the organization. It's referencing your policies, rules, how to handle encryption, how do I do VPN, this kind of thing. I've been on face-to-face or via a remote screen share. I have done multiple live sessions for 50 users or a 2,000 person online, 500 at a time, all over the world. The cons are it's more expensive and it's hard to get 50 people in a room. How long is this going to take? It's a question I always get, right? Well, it's either going to be an hour or 90 minutes, depending how fast you want me to talk, right? Or how much stuff you want to put, do you want to put 5 pounds of, 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag, right? So is it an hour or 90 minutes? I usually can do both, but the point is that it's hard to get people in a room these days. Think about your day. How many times are we in the same room for even a regular meeting? Three people are in cubes, they get on the phone, they don't go into a conference room. So you have to get a good trainer for maximum effectiveness to get it done the right way. Ha ha ha. So for fun, I thought I would do a little example training. So this is a typical training that I do. And before I do that, any questions about any of the stuff that we talked about so far? Yes.
I have one question, then
Go
I'll
ahead.
walk around the room. What about shaming or penalizing people? Because I know that
Boy,
many
oh boy.
organizations, let me just tell you, no, they're asking that, especially in the energy industry. For example, if you click on a phishing attack, oftentimes companies like that will decrease everybody's bonuses. I mean,
Oh,
because,
dear.
no, it is true. And I'm getting more and more questions about whether it should go to that level.
I do not have any information about that. I do say that if someone does click on this, if you get a report and you're on, our list, we just say it's additional training and whatever that, whatever that entails, right? So we do want to call those people aside and say, look, did you see this? And in a general, I'm about getting it right. I'm about, yes, sir. We're recording it, so we want to make sure everyone's heard.
But I do security awareness training myself, and whenever you shame somebody, you're kind of creating a stigma about them coming forth. If someone makes a mistake, they don't want to think to themselves, oh, I'm going to impact everybody's bonus. You really are more worried about what that fault occurred, right? Like how you're going to fix it.
I want it right, exactly.
Yeah, so I think, and that's going to build trust between staff and IT instead of kind of making that like, oh, they're the IT guys. So it's building communication and not ostracized.
I've really only seen it in the more highly regulated areas,
Fair
whether
enough.
it's defense, classified data, energy, et cetera. I was just wondering if you all have any of that type of activity in your organization.
So I do work for a utility, and we've a few times now have had to talk our leaders down from the edge of, being more punitive rather than supportive, and trying to provide ways to figure out why people are clicking or why people are doing behaviors we don't want them to do. And we've been able to, work with our leaders to try to figure that out without being punitive. And we do use phishing in some of our other awareness items as part of our short-term incentive goals and things. But it's an ongoing battle because, the leaders see that, oh my gosh, people are doing things that we don't want them to do. And it's really hard when that's not your job, to try to figure out what you should and shouldn't be doing. I mean, that our average employee, isn't about trying to figure out how to click and not click. They're trying to figure out how to make sure that, the grid is still up and things like that. So it's really a balancing act from our perspective.
I'm with you on that. And the other thing is, I do incident response training, and one of the scenarios that I bring up is that a person just trying to get their work done took a very sensitive file and emailed it to themselves so they can work on it while they're on vacation, and then they lose that laptop, and they come back and they report to the help desk that they did this to kind of come clean. And I say the most unbelievable thing about that scenario is that they called the help desk to come clean. That they told on themselves, so to speak. So I know it's tough, but sometimes you want to, again, why did that guy email himself that thing against the policy? Because they wanted to thwart security? No, they had a deadline, they had to get their job done. So the underlying message here is that generally speaking, most people, when they break one of these rules, again, clicking is one thing, they generally are just trying to get their job done. And we don't want to necessarily shame anybody or whatever. And again, I'm sure there's very specific situations where that might be appropriate. But generally speaking, I want to get it right. So I don't want to necessarily, I want to encourage people to tell on themselves for doing an honest mistake, so to speak. If they say, well, I did some convoluted, crazy way to circumvent security, that's one thing that's a little bit above the line. But if it's, I accidentally clicked on something or whatever, I didn't do the right thing, that's maybe, I don't know. I would be personally not in favor of that, but again, I'm not in these regulated industries where somebody could die or whatever. But again, hospitals are the worst anyway, so no offense to hospitals, but they're in the business to help people and save lives. They have the hardest time following security, believe it or not. I hate to say it. They struggle, especially doctors. Anyway, I'm pontificating, right? Any doctors in the house besides me? But any other questions about that? Anything that those of you who have created your own training programs, would you add anything to what we talked about today? Let's get some thoughts. Would you supplement? Did I hit it all? Would you do anything different? Would you recommend anything additional? Please.
So I think we have a pretty robust security awareness program, and we hold events in our lobby where we engage people, that are going to lunch and give them,
Sure.
The handouts and do little quizzes and tests and that kind of thing. Where I struggle with is our remote users. So we have users located throughout the country, some at remote locations, and more of them that are working out of their homes remotely. So they are isolated in their homes. How do you reach those people? How do you engage those people?
Well, good question. I think one of the ways is doing newsletters, of course. That's one way to reach out to them. And quite frankly, I know this might be a little expensive, but if we're handing out little tchotchkes in the cafeteria, spend a couple stamps, send them one. Let them know they're part of the program. You know, let them know that they're still valued, and, you know, here's your little mug or whatever, you know, cozy or pen or whatever you handed out at the cafeteria. Spend a couple of bucks and ship them out, even though it might be almost seem silly. But the thing is that little touch will mean more than the 50 cents that is sent to send it out there, perhaps. But newsletters definitely, and even make the Lunch and Learn something you can remote into. Make one special for the remote people as well. Specifically target them to engage in those things. Does that help? Question, sir?
No, just a comment. So we were kind of new to doing security awareness training in our company, and one of the things that we do is multiple sessions over a couple of weeks.
Yep.
We kind of go out to different facilities and do that. Every one of them, we do a WebEx.
Yep.
So that people remote can come into it. And then we also record one of them, at least one of the sessions, and then post that out there for them.
Just like we rehearsed. That's the playbook. You never want to do it, thank you. You never want to do it just one time. You want to do it at different times, and you want to be able to record one, because now the new person that starts next week and they get on board, they got a video to review or whatever the case may be. Good point. Anything else? All right, let's go
He's
ahead.
got a question. Hold on one
Oh,
sec, Glenn.
go ahead.
It's not so much a question. It's a little more a statement. I think that my experience from just being more of a dumb user than the IT experts here, I had used to work for GE, and they were my personal experience, very good at getting awareness out with the cybersecurity, and we had phishing exercises all the time, and so you were on the lookout for. And now I don't work at GE, and I'm not looking for certain emails, and so emails come, and I still remember 2 weeks ago I clicked on an email, and I went, wait a minute, shh. It was okay, but you
didn't quite type in your stuff yet.
But it was
halfway there.
But I was no longer sharpening saw.
On alert.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So we want to create a culture of being on alert. I think that's what I'm taking from that. So in the interest of time, let's go ahead and just for fun, I got a dozen slides or so. These are usually what I do as part of the annual training, just to give you maybe some ideas. I start out by, what is security? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Let's start from the basics, right? This is sometimes called the CIA triad. You know, how many people would have known that before they walked in the room today? You know, a lot of people don't, I don't know, security, is it really broken down in that? Sure it is. And I talk about the bad actor. Here's a joke you can use. I go, look, I asked our marketing department for a picture of a bad actor. They originally sent me a picture of Nicolas Cage. And so we came up with this ghosty guy here. And the idea is you want to figure out what the bad actors want. What do they want you to do? What is their goal? If we knew what the bad actor wanted to do, wouldn't we have a better chance? If we knew what they wanted, we would know what they would want to do instead. And I break it down into offense and defense. If we were on offense on a football game, we knew what the defense was going to be doing. Wouldn't we be able to score every time? And similarly, if we were on D and we knew what the offense would do, we'd stop them every time. So on offense, we want to know what should we be doing now, how to handle data, how to establish process, prepare for an attack, be on alert, like you're saying over here. And on defense, how do we know if we're even being attacked? What the heck, right? So why is security important? You know, those of us with gray hair, remember? Back in the day, nothing was connected to anything. If one computer went down, who cared? But now, everything is connected all the time. Remember I said that earlier? That's patented and copyrighted. Everybody is connected all of the time, because a risk to one is a risk to all. So now we talk about a topic. So I go topic, bad actor wants you to do, what should you do instead? Here's the topic, definition. Of course, we have passwords. We all know about passwords. IT will set a password definition. However, who was talking about personal life? Many commercial websites don't have a set of rules or different sets of rules. We want to follow good password rules regardless of whether it's at home or at work. Statistics, I say, how many people here use the same password for multiple sites? Nobody raised their hand? Baloney. 56% of people reuse passwords for multiple sites. Talk about why is that important? Well, 1 in 7 would resell their password for as little as $150. This gentleman's holding out for $250, but I think I'm going to wear him down. Just kidding. 20% share password team members. Remember that story I told you about everybody sharing passwords? It happens all the time. 20% would cease doing business. Do we really want to be on the list of people that are doing the wrong things? You know, doing Equifax and our company, partners in being hacked. Nobody wants that headline, right? So for password, the goal of the bad actor, they want you to use a password equal to a word from a dictionary if you can do so. Not all, I mean, our company website doesn't allow you to do that, Active Directory, but who knows, Facebook, this and that one might allow you to do this, right? So that's the bad actor. You're falling right into their hands when you want to do that. They want you to use the same password for multiple accounts. Because if you have this cool, great, awesome password that you just created and you use it for work, great, awesome, but now you go and buy something at, grandmascookierecipe.com and they say for faster checkout, put in a password here and create a little account. Well, I have the super cool, awesome password. I'll use that one here too. Well, Grandma's Cookie Recipe website security is horrible, and they just got hacked. So what they're going to do is they're going to take your username and that password. They're going to try it on every bank online, first of all, never mind our business website. They're going to try that combination in every automatic bank everywhere, and then they're going to find your LinkedIn account. They're going to figure out where you work, and then they're going to try and log into our area. Now, how could we have solved that problem? Different password for every site. It's that simple. That's the story I tell to get people to go, why is that so important? Who cares? That's why. Because the most they will get is your credit card that you put with Grandma's Cookie Recipe. You can cancel that in 5 seconds, and you're good everywhere else. Okay. It's a good thing I'm not excited about this. They want you to not change it or add a number to it. You know, the guys at Haylock told me the story when sometimes they can actually get to the used password file if they're doing a white hat penetration test. They found a guy's password that said, my password 1, 2, 3, 4. The guy's was there like 20 years. It was number 385. What's his password now? Let me take a wild guess. 386. So the thing is, they might not be able to get to the live password, but if they get to the old password file, they'll be able to guess what it is. So the bad actor, you're falling right into their hands by adding a number onto your password. Or including information that could be about you, or use the silly passwords like adjacent key combinations, QWERTY, all this other nonsense. There's about 500 passwords that they already check because everybody thinks they're being clever by having their password be QWERTY 123. So what should we do instead? We want to use long passwords or passphrases. We all know this. Use upper lower combos, even if not required. Never share. Never write them down in an unsecured file. Don't let your browser store passwords. Use approved storage vaults. By the way, I get more questions about this than anything else. So if you're a part of the IT organization, try and either get them into a enterprise level vault or recommend a couple of ones that are relatively inexpensive. Don't use your work email. We don't want your work email to be the email and distribution for your son's soccer team. We want that email to be used for business purposes only. Don't use public computers to log into bank or work. Use two-factor authentication when you have an opportunity to use two-factor authentication, especially to change your password or when you're, get that this goes codes. Some people don't even understand what that means. So you got to explain what two-factor authentication is if you're not familiar with it. And disable accounts you're no longer using. Now, Vitaly had a great phishing email. These are a little bit pale in comparison, but I try to teach people, you can't, can you read that? You can't. But the idea is that we want to train them to look for certain words and things to do. So for an example, the date is in an odd format. The return address is bad. I probably get some better fake ones from you, I'd imagine. Sometimes it's to your customer. But the key that I want them to learn is not necessarily to spot it, but the behavior that they want you to do, right? the behavior of most phishing emails either threaten you with something or they promise you something, one of those two things. There's always a link in the email to correct the situation, obviously, right? So the idea is that you're going to see things like irregular activity, limited your account. To regain full access, here's what you have to do. To verify your account, click here to get back into your account. These are the things you're going to see in these phishing emails because they want, what do they want? They want your credentials. They want you to type in your credentials somewhere else in a non-normal place, or it looks like the real place. So they summarize offense. So always encrypt, this and that, and the other thing. These are the things you do on offense. This is a summary of like technology. And then we have a defense, delete, you know, don't visit for invites, do this and that, and the other thing. These are all things that you cover throughout. I got into a training mode instead of a training about training mode. We talk about smishing. That's the new thing. So include that in your security awareness training if you don't have it in there already. Because the bad actors are now sending us texts. Why are they? Because we're using text now for official purposes. We're having our bank text us stuff if our credit card's overdrawn or this one or that one, right? So the idea is the bad actor knows that, and they're starting to send us texts to say, uh-oh, your card's been overdrawn. Click here, log in. Something's bad. It's bad. It's new, so we're not looking for it. We're a little more lax on our phones, even for email. We're laxy on our phones, everybody. Get your users to know this. It's a tendency. So now we have a little knowledge check. I love little quizzes. So this is where I go into the audience and I say, Anna, that's your name, right? Anna, phishing emails usually threaten users and demand that they A, send money, download and open attachments, click a link to validate their account, reply to the email with personal information, or all the above. What do you think the answer is?
All the above.
All the above. Let's give her a big hand, everybody. She got her in. And you get a prize, right? So you roll through the audience and you say, okay, what's your name?
Chris.
Chris. Telltale sign that an email is not legitimate is you're threatened with something, you're promised something, it's addressed to the customer, you're directed to click a link, or all the above.
All the above.
All the above. And guess what we're doing? Give her a hand applause. Very good, Chris. So what are we doing? Okay, I'm training about training, right? What are we doing? We're reinforcing. I'm reading 5, 10 things in a row that we want them to remember, right? Yeah, the answer is all the above. Yeah, it's a stupid prize. But the thing is, we're reinforcing everything that we just trained on. What's your name? Molly? Best practices for dealing with phishing emails include delete it, report it, go to the website directly if you think it might be legit, or all the above.
B, report the email to IT.
Who can help her? Best practices.
Go directly to the website. If you think it may be legit, I would never tell anyone to do that. I would tell them to.
Do you think it might be all the above?
I guess it could be all the above.
It could be all the above. I think that's the answer that I'm looking for. But see, they're all right, right? See, since you are right in all of them, but they're all the above is what we want to. We could either ignore it, we can report it to IT, or we can go to the website directly. All three of those things are good things to do. So all the above is right, right?
Sure.
Very good. She's got it. So there you go. There you get a beautiful pen, which is a wonderful prize.
Number C is a little dangerous, though. That's what she was saying. Number C is a little dangerous.
Go to the website directly if you think it is legit.
Some people think things are legit because they didn't notice that it was bad.
If you go to in other words, here's what that means. If I get an email from my bank that is a phishing email, I'm not going to click the link. I'm going to go directly to my bank site and type it in manually. That's what I mean. Go to the site directly if you think it might be a legitimate point. So if I go and log in directly and deliberately into my normal website, I'm going to look in my message center or whatever and see if there's any real problem. That's what I'm talking about, Molly.
I'll blame it on a phrasing.
Well, how would you phrase that? Help me out.
Well, I
Go
think
to Google, search the website, and find it.
I
People
think she's
type
talking
in.
about unknown websites. So if something's being presented to us that we're not, like
Right.
LinkedIn or our bank that we don't
Right.
have a normal relationship with, I think
That's what you're saying. So I guess this was it after the context of the whole training. These are
Lawyering you.
she's lawyering me. Is that what's going on?
you better lawyer up.
If I have a PIN or a password on my phone to get into, it's perfectly okay if I put all my passwords on a sticky note or a memo app, because you have to be able to get into the phone in the first place. Michael, is that a true or false?
I would say that's false.
Here you go. You win. All right, sir, Nick. If I allow Google Chrome or another browser to store all my passwords, even ones for work or sensitive sites, that's okay because they're hidden and encrypted. I can't even see what they are, so they're safe. Let's go false on that one. Oh, even though that I'm personally investigating whether, oh, there you go. Whether or not these password vaults for Chrome or Firefox or whatever, how good they are. I'm not sold on them quite yet. But I think if you use your regular password vault like Keeper, 1Pass, these are the things that we recommend. And a tried and true rule is that if you want to change anything about a wire transfer, you should only do it through email. That way you know where the request came from. Of course, that's false. Last couple here. Phishing is a social engineering tactic characterized by a clean desk policy, mobile device and PIN erases, a 2-trout limit at your local link. Phishing, get it, haha. Or an impersonation of authority. It's always an impersonation of authority. As long as you keep your phone in your pocket or purse, okay, it's okay to not mandate a PIN. Of course, that's false. And always execute the request made via emails from the CEO or CFO, especially if they urgently want you to do a business unusual wire transfer. Remember, they're too busy to get or confirm every order that they give. So we have a little fun with it as well. If they laugh, they're learning, okay? If they're engaged, they're learning. Hopefully you like my little demo here, okay? Thank you for the feedback on the question though, Molly. I do appreciate that. I always learn too, right? Every time I do it, I get a little bit different. And so anyway, that's it. Hopefully that's enough information for you to be able to put together a program and execute it, give you a little example of the kind of training. Again, try to be as engaging as possible and to, just, we know that they don't, when I face my audience, I know that they don't want to be there. So if you go with that in mind, you want to be as entertaining and as informative as possible, give them the information that you want them to have to be successful. That's my approach, and hopefully a little bit of that rubbed off so you guys can do that too.
Thank you so much, Glenn. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Haylock and Trend Micro. And if you guys have any questions afterwards, please come up and talk to us. Again, I'm Jen Rathburn. I'm here and I'm a partner at Foley. Also, again, reminder, if you want to be involved with anything regarding workforce development, we're holding that session here January 17th with InfraGard. And, if you want to be involved with IoT and the Cisco session, please let me know. We'll be standing. If anybody has any questions for the main audience, let us know before we end. And thank you very much for your time tonight. Eat food, have a drink before you go, and thank you. Oh, and take your posters.
Yes. They're in the hallway.